With the recent release of the Netflix Witcher Season 4 trailer, conversation has once again sprung up about this TV show that once held so much promise, but now has been shortened from its original planned 7-season run to just 5 seasons, with its spin-offs having since been cancelled. It feels like once again everyone is throwing in their 2 cents whether this show will be dead on arrival, but sometimes I wonder, are we just amplifying the loudest voices? And are we actually missing what the masses are really saying? Well, in order to turn this question back to the people, the fans, I decided to put up a couple of polls on my YouTube community page to get a feel of the waters of how people are going to approach season 4 this time. Obviously, the first question had to be, will you be watching The Witcher season 4? And after 3,000 votes, only 12% said yes, with 52 saying no, but I did watch the previous seasons, 20% saying no, and I've never watched any season, and 16% saying that they just wanted to see the answers to the poll so far. What this means is that about 77% of people who originally started watching the show have dropped off. Well, then the obvious follow-up question to this was, when did you stop watching The Witcher Netflix? After season 1? Well, that was the answer of 27% of people. 44% of people said after season 2. 13% of people said after season 3. Of course, I have to acknowledge that less people answered this follow-up question, only 2.2 thousand votes instead of the 3,000. However, if we look at this cumulatively, this means that after season 2, that's already around 70% of people that originally started the show have now given up. So given all of that and the success that the show had at the start, it's really interesting to see that Netflix is still pushing ahead, even though such a small percent of people declares that they're still watching. I think that this shows that there had to be something that happened in season 2 that fundamentally impacted how people viewed the series, because now Netflix is courting just the minority that wants to continue watching. Of course, bias, I'm asking superfans, I'm sure Netflix's numbers are different, but you did pick up the Witcher IP because you wanted to make money off of the fans. So if something's not working for them, I think that those are the people often to ask. And so once again, I asked the people, but this time with an open-ended question. What are your thoughts on or predictions for The Witcher Netflix season 4? Good, bad, give me all the takes. What do you think they'll do well, if anything? And what are you most worried that they will mess up? What is your overall take about the TV show at this moment? Hi, my name is Vera, and I decided to get these responses to organize them in the most logical sense that I could see in order to help people who maybe are interested in why The Witcher Netflix gets so much kind of hate, or, why there's so much discourse about this upcoming season. And if you aren't clued in, well, this is the video for you. Here's what the people are thinking. Here's a synthesis of not just the loudest voices, not just the people that have the most subscribers, but people who were fans, wanted the best for this TV show, and ultimately were left along the way. The first thing that I noticed was that there were some people that just forgot that this was happening. There seemed to be a collective amnesia, so I guess that could be a part of the drop-off. Maybe Netflix wasn't pushing it to the right people or whatever. But then there was also this thought that, wait, maybe the show was cancelled, because there was a lot of hate in the previous seasons, and there were cancellations announced, and so I guess some people just thought that included this as well. And actually, I noticed in other comment videos and in other comment sections that people don't realize that season 5 has already been filmed. So if you weren't aware, originally the plan was to have 7 seasons and a couple of spin-offs like Blood Origin and The Rats, and also, of course, the animated movies. But that has been cut short. So instead of the 7 seasons, Lauren Hystrick's idea had to be condensed into 5. And actually season 4 and 5 were filmed back to back. So I think that they'll just try to get season 5 out next year at the same time, just to kind of get it all over with, to be honest. Then there were a couple of educated guesses in the comments that I can't lie made me chuckle a little bit. So for example, there's one that says, I am expecting it to be unrelated to the books. Yeah, I mean, nothing really has been so far, so other than the names. So yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like this is spot on. There was also this extremely scientific prediction that this season, like the previous seasons, will be 100% and will also continue to deviate wildly from the source material, but not in a good way like CD Projekt. I never know whether I should do the Polish pronunciation or the English. Not in a good way like CD Projekt Red or CD Projekt Red, whatever. And this is actually a really good point that I think some people that maybe kind of want to rage bait and don't really know The Witcher that well. I feel like sometimes they just throw stuff out and put the video games up as this pinnacle of a faithful adaptation, but like they're not. It's just they kind of basically retcon the ending of the books, kind of. The ending of the books is purposefully ambiguous, and they kind of choose a fork in that road and decide to canonize an interpretation of the ending, and then they basically write a fanfic. A big thing for people that were originally fans of the books and fans just of the books is that they decide to complete Ithleen's prophecy. So Ithleen's prophecy is this big legend, I guess, that marks the life of mostly Ciri, to be honest, and it really pushes the narrative kind of within the saga, but the point of it is that it never gets fulfilled. At least we'd never see it play out. And so that's why a lot of people have issues with the ending of The Lady of the Lake, because they think that they signed up for a more traditional fantasy novel. I think that's an issue with the marketing, to be honest, of the books. But I'm trying my best, guys, to like set expectations in the right spot. But yeah, the point is that we never really see Ithleen's prophecy be fulfilled. And CDPR retcons that and says, no. Here's the ending, and I'm giving it to you in The Witcher 3. So people who like put up the games as like a pinnacle of a faithful adaptation, especially people who say that it's an adaptation of the story in the books, just I think they're a little bit misinformed. But fair enough. Like there's a lot of different pieces of information like floating around. But the difference is, like this commenter says, CDPR did deviate from the source material, but they gave us a great story. They gave us an incredible story. They remained faithful to the spirit of the books, and the characters. They nailed the characters. They nailed the environments, whether it's from like a cultural standpoint, whether it's from the side quests that are so in line with the short stories that they outshine the main quest at some points. But it's really obvious that it's made from a place of love, for the source material, and I really think that they tried to stick to it as much as they can. And when it comes to sticking to source material, I really feel like they try to stick to it if there's like a precedent in the books. Also, all adaptations will have to deviate from the source material inevitably. But yeah, I really think CDPR did it in a fantastic way where the deviations didn't like majorly subtract from the books, because if you look at the books in isolation, they're a very thought-provoking examination of history and the pressures that telling history puts on people, on how perception of history, even like being worried about that, how that affects everyday lives, about how war separates families, about how we chronicle history and how we retell it. And that is supported by its ambiguous ending and the not fulfillment of Ithleen's prophecy. But then the games, even though they retcon that, if you look at the games and books together, then you get a great story, because the way they finished Ithleen's prophecy, even though that was against the spirit of the books and its purpose in the books, they did a great job. So you know what? The story is great. So you can have both. But what Netflix did was they deviated from the source material, and it's more noticeable and egregious, I think, because, again, CDPR was continuing the story. It was like an unofficial sequel. But Netflix said that they would want to retell the story of the books. And so I think a lot of maybe game fans could have been excited that they get to see the story play out on screen without having to commit to reading the books, which I think you should read the books because they're incredible. But Netflix didn't deliver on that promise. And at the start, I really had a feeling as if they were kind of setting themselves apart from the games. Like they're not going to do what the games did, blah, blah, blah. They're not taking inspiration from them. But then by the time season 3 comes around, that's not true. They're trying to pander to game fans. I mean, why did they make Radovid an adult? Because he was in The Witcher 3, that's why. So, the deviations that they make from the source material, like focusing so much on Francesca and Fringilla for no reason, for making Yennefer a main character for no reason. Again, she is my favorite character. She should not be a main character. Just simplifying every single short story and taking out anything that might cause contention within viewers, anything that might challenge viewers, they just take it out. And I just don't understand why. I have to believe that it's a misreading of the text because it would just make me sad if they did that intentionally. And kind of building on that, another person said, I fear that they'll put heavy emphasis on made up stuff and plot points. They'll take up the majority of the screen time while skipping over or rushing through key aspects of the original narrative. They've done so in the past. Yeah. 100%. And to be honest, from the trailer, I already know that this is going to happen. So apparently, allegedly, they are adapting Baptism of Fire. And Baptism of Fire is one of, if not the fan favorite book, I want to say. And that's because, again, I have this conviction that the way The Witcher is marketed, or like the books, and what you actually find within them, there is just such a disconnect because people want to go in there and get a story about a monster hunter, Geralt killing monsters, but that's not really what the books are about. As you can see, if you watch my Witcher summary videos, there really is only one short story that is just about Geralt going in on a contract and killing a monster, and it's the first one. So because all the other ones at some point get overshadowed by something else. So yeah, but Baptism of Fire is the Geralt book. That is the Geralt book. Again, is he slaying monsters left, right, and center? Not exactly, but it is the book where he is the unequivocal. Am I saying that word right? Unequivocal. English isn't my first language, okay? Don't judge me. But he is the main character, and you cannot argue with that. And he has the majority of the page time. And that is a very big refreshing thing, especially after, Blood of Elves and Time of Contempt, where this page time is much more shared. And it's also a really nice, return to the character that we all started the series for, especially since Tower of the Swallow is the Ciri book. Because it aligns so much with what people want going into the series, it is so beloved. That being said, in the trailer, you can already see some really bizarre plot elements, like Yennefer building an army and the sorceresses training with swords while being supervised by Lambert and Cohen. I'm still trying to process that, to be honest. It's just so bizarre to me. I hope this is obvious, but that does not happen in the books at all. And so I just think that this very educated guess that they will just make up a bunch of stuff is true, because we see it in the trailer. This is supposed to be the Geralt book. If they're combining Baptism and the Tower of Swallows, well, then it would be 50-50 Geralt Ciri, because Baptism is Geralt, Tower is basically the Ciri book, and then things reconverge in Lady of the Lake. And Lady of the Lake, honestly, it would make sense to just give an entire season to that book because it is kind of long. And then Antique Gaming Max really summarizes this really well, much better than the yapping that I've been doing, when he says, what baffles me is that they keep doing all this stuff again and again while at the same time mocking themselves. Seriously, who writes a quote like, "How will you be reborn?" to a character like Geralt? What a company I have ended up with. Indeed, Liam, indeed. I will watch it because at the end of the day, it's still Witcher, but don't expect me to talk good about it. Let's go. LOL. It's it's almost like it's a parody of itself at the moment, and this person is showcasing the perspective of some people are just watching it for the lols. They want to see how they're going to screw up more and more. The thing that I want to say about hate watching though, and full transparency, I was not going to watch this season, but then I decided to make a YouTube channel, and now you guys want me to, so I will do it for you. I think that the best thing to kind of protest something or show that you don't support something is to ignore it and to not watch it. So if I didn't have this channel, I just wouldn't be watching season 4. Like, to be honest, season 3, the way they did the dear friend letters, I almost stopped there and there. The fact that they butchered the dear friend letters, they flipped them on the head. I can't. Yeah. I would say I'm surprised, but they tried to have Yen kill Ciri, so I'm not surprised. And they turned Eskel into a tree. They tried to make Vesemir take advantage of Ciri and turn her into a witcher. So yeah, honestly, at this point, I'm not surprised. But I never thought that those words that I just said would ever come out of my mouth when I first heard the Witcher TV show be announced. But here we are. And so, yeah, I guess some people just want to say, let's go and just, out of morbid curiosity, like watching a train crash and you just can't look away. Some people are still gonna watch just for the lulz. And actually, that part where Geralt shouts, "Let's go" in the trailer is one that I see people bring up time and time again as just a very bizarre moment. There are quite a few, but I did see a lot of discussion about that. So here's a little shout out to that moment. That brings me to talking about the recast. Like the commenter before says, indeed, Liam, indeed. Liam didn't write the script, and the show was already broken before Liam came in. He is stepping into some big shoes to fill, definitely, and because Henry Cavill was very beloved in this role. But let me remind you, people didn't like him at the start. People didn't like that at the start. Now people are rewriting the history and saying, oh, we always loved Henry Cavill. That was not true. I remember when the screen test came out and people were dissing the wig, the outfit, and they were just saying that it looks like expensive cosplay. So you know what, if you somehow liked the show and you loved Henry Cavill, like whatever, like it's not Liam's fault, give him a chance. And that's kind of what this next person says about the recast. Well, I hope Liam does fine. Don't like to hate on people, but I think he will do an okay job. Just because we all love Daddy Nerd does not mean Liam can't make the character come to life in his own way. I'm just not going to watch because I don't trust them with the source material, so I'm not watching mostly to prove my point that they will lose viewers when they don't respect or value the source material. I think this is a very, very healthy take, and one that I would probably be in the same shoes again if I didn't have a YouTube channel. But there's another part to this recast conversation that people maybe aren't touching upon as much, and I think it would be funny for the lols, if you will. And that's basically that at the end of season 3, since I think the last 2 episodes were aired separately to the first couple, if I remember correctly, I tried to erase it from my memory, but if I remember correctly, that's what happened. I remember a rumor swirling around that they will in some way have a very emotional send-off to Henry before the recast, and that never happened. I remember some people speculating that since Geralt is injured or whatever, then they will say, oh yes, the Dryads made magic on him or whatever, and then, you know, at the end you see a shot from behind, and then that's it, and then the next time we see him, it's Liam Hemsworth. That never happened, and like they just haven't addressed the recast in any way, other than something that I thought was pretty funny in my trailer reaction, because they keep saying, oh, how will you be reborn, Witcher Geralt? And I said, as Liam Hemsworth, apparently, and I thought that was really funny. That probably wasn't them trying to talk about the recast, but that it, like, if it was, then that's the only way that they've touched upon it. But this user says, I wouldn't put it past the writers to throw in a line that says something like, did you do something different with your hair to acknowledge the recast? Oh, 100%. Guys, I think we should make a bingo card for the season. And like have a drinking game. I think that would be great. At least for the people that are still watching. Other than the recast and the let's go line, the sorceresses, the lodge discourse is quite big online as well at the moment, which I already kind of touched upon, but this user, I think, really nails the nail on the head, if that's the saying. Says, I'm intrigued to see Regis and Bonhart, but honestly, I'm super worried about Yennefer's plot and the Lodge of Sorceresses. I feel they're going to portray the Lodge as good guys, like a nice feminist group with the greater good in mind, and not the dangerous, manipulative intentions they actually embody. The Lodge has very clear allusions to how radical feminist groups end up replicating the same violence and oppressive models they're trying to defeat. They already made Philippa a nice, sympathetic character instead of the cold-hearted and power-hungry monster she actually is, and her determination to manipulate Ciri. Watching the trailer and seeing Yennefer become this leader figure makes me so nervous. Yennefer's true transformation, to me, was that she learned to stop following political parties in order to save Ciri. That felt like a much stronger political stance, as she deserted the roles others had in mind for her. 100%. And that is why at the start of The Witcher 3, like going back to this idea that yes, CDPR retcon stuff, obviously, but they did it in a respectful or at least like thought-provoking way. That is why Geralt is just so like frustrated with Yennefer at the start of the game when you're in the castle in Vizima, because he thought that Yennefer gave up this. Like, why in what world would Yennefer collaborate with Nilfgaard to get Ciri? What? No. In the books, she was opposed to the Lodge. So I think in fear of having anything in this TV show that in any sort of way that challenges people to think in maybe ways that they haven't thought before, they're just really simplifying and reducing Yen's role and Yen's arc and the arc of the sorceresses from something really thought-provoking, I think, to just, I don't know, a simple girl power moment like that one scene in Avengers Endgame. Another take that people are having is more so about the internal Netflix politics of it all. So Netflix is kind of notorious by now for canceling shows that people really care about and shows that are successful, but they're maybe not successful enough. And yet, even though they canceled like 2 seasons of the 7-season plan, The Witcher still somehow has 5 seasons, and someone says, my exact thought is, really? This is the one show they don't cancel? I kind of get the sentiment, especially if you were a fan of a show that was actually good and they decided to axe. And another person says, the fact that there's only going to be season 4 and 5 and then the show is over has got me so intrigued to see how they're going to cram the events of the last 3 books into 2 seasons. And I think this would be a fair point, but they haven't really been adapting the books as is. So I kind of feel like they're just going to have their own plot that they make up as they did in all the past seasons. I really hate it when people just say that, oh, people are haters just to be haters, because there are genuine critiques of the past seasons. For example, this one by Enigmatic Penguin. The series has strayed so far from the source material in plot and characterizations that I no longer think it's an adaptation of the book series. It's Witcher in name only. It reminds me a lot of the Halo TV series in that way. To me, the most botched character is Ciri. Instead of being a spunky little girl who overcomes the most heinous possible event and grows into a capable young lady of space and time, she's a woman in her early 20s who killed someone in like the 3rd episode of season 1 and is more of a peer to Geralt and Yen than an adopted child. She has no arc and she's the central character of the books. I'm unbothered by any of the casting in the series other than Ciri's age. I think they could have done an amazing job with the cast and the crew they had, but they completely strayed from adapting the story. To use a Game of Thrones metaphor, season 1 felt like season 7, where the train was just barely on the tracks, and everything after has been a full-on season 8 meltdown. I think that is a very fair and genuine critique coming from someone who clearly really likes the source material. This comment particularly stuck out to me because I am currently working on part 3 of the Witcher summary series, and I am currently reading Blood of Elves. And Blood of Elves starts off with like a dream sequence that Ciri is having a nightmare, I guess, of the siege of Sintra, of her running away. And it's just so almost psychedelic in the way that it is written. It is like sensory overload, mimicking the sensory overload that Ciri has. It's just so obvious that Sapkowski is trying to center her innocence and her naiveness at the start, because when she first sees Kahir, the Black Knight in the helm with the birds of prey feathers, when she first sees him and she's paralyzed by fear, it's not just fear that's paralyzing her. She literally can't move because she's just a child trying to get out from under the limbs of the dead knight that tried to save her. Like, that's kind of traumatizing. And so the fact that we never let Ciri be this innocent, naive, bushy-tailed youth, you know, who is incapable of protecting herself, because she should be incapable at the start. Yeah, that just really ruins everything, and it removes her arc. And the new stories that they make for those two characters really take away a lot of time from Geralt. I just think that's so sad, because like there is a reason why the story is told mostly from Geralt's perspective. And so I find that in my critiques, I focus a lot on Yen and Ciri, but like that's just because a lot of the show focuses on Yen and Ciri. And so like my critique is often just like, oh my god, what are they doing with those two characters? Because like Geralt isn't even there really to critique a lot of the time. And so some people are content to just watch it crash and burn from afar. My thoughts on season 4 is that I stopped watching after season 2. Edit, this might need some explaining. At the end of season 1, I was incensed when they took a touching moment and turned it into dross. After Geralt's mom heals him, he hitches a ride with a merchant. Geralt gets out of the wagon, and there's Ciri, whom he already knows and loves. In something of a cliche moment, they run to each other and hug. The producers, instead of taking this touching moment and make Geralt and Ciri strangers, and somehow Ciri already knows Yen's name, but know who she is. Not to mention, they make her about 10 years older. I went into season 2 with dubious expectations, and I was still disappointed. It was then I read about the writers having a disdain for the lore, the books, and the games. Very little lore was included in season 2. Where in the hell they found the witches in the woods, I have no idea. I was done. So this kind of hitches back to that idea that a lot of people bowed out in season 2. I think there were a lot of different reasons for why this trend is the case. I'd actually love one day in the future for there to be a documentary that just chronicles all the decisions that were made from like a removed standpoint. Or heck, Lauren, Miss Histrick, if you want to sit down with someone who will hear you out and will just genuinely ask questions, you know, because I'm just so curious. What were the artistic interpretations of the books, and what were like the intentions behind adapting them this way? I'd genuinely love to hear the reasoning. So I'm here. But yeah, the sentiment of being done as well is echoed by this user who says, it doesn't actually matter what they do. In my opinion, they're too far gone to produce anything good for the series. That is my perspective as well. I think that after season 1, they made some mess ups, but they did have the difficulty of, you know, having to adapt to anthologies of short stories and giving us some sort of idea of who these characters were, what this world was. Like, it was a daunting task, I can't lie. But once they get into Blood of Elves, like, that book is very straightforward. So those things don't really become an issue. And yet when adapting Blood of Elves, that's when they decide to have the egregious mistake of having Yennefer try to kill Ciri, which after that point, you broke the TV show. Anything past that point, I think, is too far gone. Yet other people are here for the chaos, but from a different side. Maybe they're not going to watch the TV show, but they are excited to watch videos where they tear apart season 4. Sometimes, you know, those videos, I do wonder if I'm leaning too much into hateration, but you know what? I feel like sometimes it's deserved. I never try to be rude and, you know, call people personal insults, because I just think there's no need for that. However, I do think that it is kind of cathartic to sometimes watch someone just pick apart all the nitpicks of this is wrong, that character would never say that, that character would never wear that, this location looks nothing at all like what it's supposed to be, the plot is fundamentally flawed and misunderstood because of XYZ. And so I think that can be very cathartic for people to watch. And you know what? After the low-key trauma induced by this TV show, I think fair enough. And yet some people don't even care about that. They're just so far gone that they have leaned into apathy. Like this guy who says, "My genuine thoughts are who cares? With as much distance as we have now, even the first season doesn't seem to have any passion or interest in the source material behind it." I think collectively we know that we had so much hope for this. I remember there being so much hype and so much excitement. There were murals all over Warsaw and oh my gosh, it was so exciting. And then it came, and I remember we even talked about this because I was still in high school when it premiered. And we had one Polish class, which was just a discussion about The Witcher season 1. I just remember that conversation that we had being so charged, and you know, we wanted to love it so much, and there was just so much wrong with it. But even now, I just think people, it's just so far gone, and people just feel empty about it, you know, and that emptiness eventually turns into apathy. However, there is always a group of people that are much more optimistic and happy than I am, and they say, "I will wait and judge it after I watch the whole thing. The rageous sections are my favorite from the books. Hope they don't mess up there." And you know what? Power to this person. Power to this person. I wish I could be like this person, and I wish that I could have the same hope and optimism and like goodwill as this person does. I think this especially because, just like this person says, we all just wanted this to be good. You know, no one wanted the Witcher TV show to be bad. No one wanted it to become what it has become. We just wanted it to be good. And so if someone still has faith it can be, who am I to squash that? And I think the most beautiful thing that is coming out of the TV show is that people are turning to the books. For example, this person says, "I'm currently rereading Baptism of Fire so I can cry about how good it could have been." Even when I did my video when I walked around Warsaw with a sign looking for Witcher fans, some people said that they actually first watched the TV show and then got into the books, and then they realized the TV show was bad. But you know what? More people bought the books, more people read the books, and I think that's great. I have people in my comment section saying that they haven't read a book in years, and then they watch one of my videos and they feel my passion for the topic and they suddenly get inspired to pick up a book. And those comments mean so much to me. I feel like I always comment or reply the same thing saying, "Thank you, this means so much to me," but it really does, you know. It's kind of surreal that me sitting in my college dorm room yapping about a fantasy series that I love and is so important to me motivates people enough to go out and read that fantasy series and hopefully get infected with that passion and fervor while reading the original text as well. And so even though the Witcher reputation has been tarnished, and you know, I'm not disillusioned. I know that a lot of people, when they think of The Witcher, they'll be like, "Oh, like the Netflix TV show," and I'll say, "No, not at all like the Netflix TV show anyway." But if a fraction of the people that watched the TV show were interested enough to go out and buy the book, read the book, or see the season that is allegedly adapting Baptism of Fire coming out, and their reaction is, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this, I'm just going to read the book," well, I think that's beautiful. And I just think that this is a wonderful sentiment to end this video on. So, do people still care about Netflix's Witcher? Well, I don't know if I can say that they really care about Netflix's Witcher, but I definitely see and feel that people definitely 100% still care about The Witcher. And that makes me very happy. So on this note, thank you so much to anyone who participated in the polls. Thank you so much to anyone who commented. I tried to read through all the comments. If you have any thoughts that you want to share but didn't see the community tabs, be sure to let me know in the comments. Also, like and subscribe. I never say that, but it really helps the channel and it really boosts me in the algorithm. And you know what? Sometimes you have to pander to that. So here's my pandering for the month done. Anyway, that's all from me and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.